Welcome back to the Hermetic Podcast. We're back here with Frater Spaeros. He would like to talk about Christian Kabbalah and his experiences with that. So, why don't we get started? You said you would like to start by talking about what the Kabbalah actually is.
Yeah, so you've got three different variations of it. You've got the Kabbalah with a K, you got the Kabbalah spelled with a C, and Kabbalah spelled with a Q. This confused the life out of me when I first began studying this. But essentially, Kabbalah, when you see it spelled with a K, is the original Jewish mystic study of the tree of life. Um, and this you could go on and on about, but essentially it maps out creation. It talks about how God spoke the world into existence, and the Hebrew letters, and there's a lot that goes on there. And the Kabbalah with a C, this is about the Christian variation of it, and a somewhat of an attempt that started in the 1400s and 1500s, going up through about 1650, um, before it began to die out. But it's essentially the Christianized version that was a desperate attempt at converting the Jewish um, belief system and trying to use it to prove Christ's place in existence, showing him being all through that tree as well. And then you've got the modern version, which is the most perfected form, and that is the Hermetic Kabbalah, which is spelt with a Q. And this maps out the tarot, major arcana, the Hebrew letters, the planets, and the whole astrological system, basically. And that's just to put it simply. It goes much deeper than this, but um, yeah. So that was what I was wanting to start out saying, because a lot of people see that, and I was one of them that didn't get it. And it's quite simple actually. And the Christian Kabbalah, it's far more simple than the Kabbalah we know today. And it's far more simple than even the Jewish mystic version. And even I personally feel that, I know that the tree of life is a symbol older than even the Jewish religion. Um, it goes back into Egypt, and even before that, it's one of the oldest symbols that we have on this earth. That also ties in with the flower of life, and this ties into sacred geometry. Now, this was something that got my attention as a Christian, learning about something called the tree of life when I'd never actually seen this symbol or anything anywhere growing up or anything like that. I was just absolutely head over heels. I love the tree. It's my favorite symbol, my favorite thing to meditate on. It's literally a map of creation, and you can apply it. You can spend many lifetimes studying this topic, and you will never truly, fully have a grasp on what it actually is. But um, I loved learning about the Jewish Kabbalah. Uh, this was
So,
my
let's
attempt.
start talking about what the Kabbalah actually is. How is it structured? Let's talk about that for a second.
In the Christian Kabbalah.
Oh, either one. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer
Well, that's what
Christian
I was getting ready
or
to say. I was getting ready to say that's what grabbed my attention. I was on search for the roots of Christianity and going back to the Jewish roots. This was where I learned the symbol, and also reading books like the Sefer Yetzirah and things like this that show you how God mapped out creation using the Hebrew alphabet. Like I was speaking earlier, but that led into trying to do essentially what the Christian Kabbalists did, by um, making Christ fit into the picture, I guess you could say. Now,
Okay, but
this
before going into that, I know a lot of our audience is probably deeply into Hermeticism, but let's give a quick overview of what this glyph actually looks like. Just describe it a little bit, like the glyph overall. What does it look like?
you're talking about the tree of life.
Yes.
Um, Essentially, it's made up of 10 spheres and or 10 circles, and this is where you have your um, three pillars. You know that they come from the tree, and you've got the left side, um, which has three spheres. You've got the middle, which has four spheres, not including the eye, which isn't a sephiroth, but that's another topic. And then you've got the right side, which is just like the left, that mirrors the left. So you've got the two opposites, and then you've got the middle, which um, goes back to walk in the middle and knowing that righteousness isn't about perfection, but about balance and holding things, all things in balance. And it's like Yeshua said, um, straight is the way, or
Wide
broad is
is
the
the
way.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, broad is the way, and wide is the gate that leads to the path of destruction. But narrow is the way, and slim is the gate that leads to the path of righteousness. And few be there that find it. And few be there that find it is because everybody's out here looking for perfection. And the ones
Fair.
that can achieve perfection run away from trying to achieve righteousness because they don't feel that they're worthy. It's just this whole
Yep, yep. So
system.
it's
So,
fair to say that we're both talking about the same tree, where we have 10 Sephirot, which
yeah,
are arranged, as you said, four down the middle, three down each side, and that there's 22 paths connecting them, right? That
yeah,
actually is going to be relevant later when we start talking about some of our meditations.
yeah.
So, is it fair to say that we are talking about how this tree is a map of creation, like you said, but by means of the 22 Hebrew letters, right?
Yes, yes. And I'm going to bring up now that if I don't know what the proper term for this is, but sound mapping, if you look at it scientifically, the Hebrew alphabet is the only alphabet known to man that when you speak the word, like Aleph, for instance, the sound mapping that's mapping the frequency of your speech literally comes out to be the shape of an Aleph, and it's like that for um, every letter. So they literally make up the Hebrew symbol for that letter. And it's just, proof for me that God really did speak this world into creation. And you can take that literally, you can take that metaphorically, or you can take it however you want to, but it points to the fact that we live in a reality that is all made up of frequency and waves that move, light, sound, and vibration that you can feel. They're one and the same. They're just different places on the same scale. There isn't a separate scale for sound than there is for light. They are on the same uh, spectrum. They're just on different places. You know what I mean? They're just a different degrees of the
Yes, for
same.
sure.
Yeah,
For
you know what I'm
sure.
trying to say. So it all people talk about, joke about hearing colors and seeing sounds when they take like psychedelics and stuff like that, and that's legit. Like, you know, sound does have a light to it, and light does have a sound to it, but human
Yes,
limitations
fair.
won't allow us to
Yes.
perceive it. You know,
Yes, I'd say that's a pretty fair representation of creation.
and that scale we can only see 0.0036, I believe, percent.
Yes, yes, for sure.
You
For
know,
sure.
it's
Let's bring this back a little bit, just for the sake of, you know, keeping it relatively structured. So, here's an interesting question. How does this all affect your relationship with Christ?
So this is what pulled me in deeper to understanding what the symbols and codes meant in the scriptures. I was big on prophecy, big time, and I knew inherently that I just knew that all my life that these people were talking about things that they thought were literal and they were actually symbolic, just like Yeshua talked about how he spoke in parables, and it wasn't just him that spoke in parables, but it was the God speaking through him that spoke in parables, just like the prophets, and the prophets did too. And so this put me on a search for understanding, and it led me deeper into Kabbalah and trying to learn how this is all mapped out. And there's only a couple things though in Christian Kabbalah that they really truly uh, did the most, and that was gematria, which is taking letters and putting a number value to it, and coming up with a final number that also matches other words that have the same number. And it's a whole thing in its own. You can study gematria all in its own, which is essentially they call it numerology. And it's and notaricon, which is where you take like a Hebrew sentence, for instance, like Agala, in the LBRP, um, which is Ata Gabor Leolam Adonai, and so it's basically Agla. I mean, and so that's essentially Notaricon in a nutshell. And then they did something called Tamura. Um, it's like a mystical cipher where they took the Hebrew alphabet and they, just for an example, they would push the Z up to the A and push the A down to the B, and then they would shift the whole alphabet with it. They would take a word, they would take a word like Babel, and in Jeremiah coded Babel using the word sheshakin, and that's just an example of it. And when you um, translate that, you've got Babel, which is Bet Lamed, and you shift it with the code, it
So
would be
it's great that we are talking about some of the techniques that Kabbalists came up with, but would you say that this has affected your relationship with Christ through the ability to understand his nature more or something like that?
absolutely. Well, that's the whole point of me telling you this. Those were the three things they were known for the most. But these details, these codes, there's an underlying code to reality that everyday person misses. Even some of the most dedicated Christians and the most legitimate and validated prophets that have come, um, they don't know about these things like that because they just fall into their belief system. And for me personally, it allowed me to see how he coded reality with his name, and even um, in our DNA, and it's everywhere, and you can find it just like the Christian Kabbalists were doing. But the Hermetic Kabbalah helped me to find myself again. It wasn't just about serving Christ. It was about learning how can I become an ambassador? How can I become useful and overcoming things like imposter syndrome and not feeling worthy, and always being told, you're a sinner and this and that, if you're not living a certain way, if you're not following the clique, and if you're not, falling in line and fitting in their box, then you aren't, you get cast aside. And I've never fit in a box anywhere ever. And um, I learned you unfold a box, you get the cross. So it's just all of these things add up to the details is what matters for me, and not everybody needs that. And I'm not here to convince anyone of my path. I'm not here to convince anyone that what I say is true. These are theories. These are things I've come to realize in my personal walk, and the Bible talks on. We have to work out our own salvation. This brings a scientific standpoint to it for me. This brings details and proof, and it brings receipts. This isn't Christians making the Bible into a fairy tale and then believing that fairy tale to be true. This is taking the Bible and making it a map and a codex for how you can find who you are inside and who Christ envisioned us to be. He paved the way for us, so to say, and
Mhm.
he was able to open the gate for us to even have that ability. He gave dominion back to man. Man was given dominion of this earth. Satan took that away. He said, "Oh, Satan was God of this world," but that was before he paid the price to get the keys back and hand that dominion back to man. You want to know why evil is in this world? It's because God gave us dominion and free will, even over himself. On the earth, man has dominion. And so this is why things get by. This is why evil gets by. And anyway, I want to understand what that dominion means. Christ died so that we could have that again. He died so
So,
that we could bring Eden back.
so how do you think that this goes along with your path in the Golden Dawn? More specifically, how do you view it through the lens of somebody going through the outer order, trying to attain Tiferet? Because I know that a lot of Christian Kabbalists talk about it in similar terms to Golden Dawn. Like you go through these elemental grades, you perfect your relationship with these elements as much as you can, you balance them out as much as you can, and then you
Mhm.
achieve what even Dion Fortune called Christ consciousness. What do you think about all this? Does this ring true for you at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was the question again?
Oh, yes, sorry. I was just asking, what do you think about this whole idea of going through the elemental grades, balancing out your pentagram and trying to achieve Christ consciousness in Tiferet?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What's my experience with it personally?
Yes, yes, so far.
So far, I feel what I got a taste of when I experienced awakening. When I experienced for the first time that there's more to this reality than what I've been taught as a Christian. Um, I began to see things and experience gifts that I didn't even know we were uh, capable of achieving. But it woke something up in me, and you hear about people going insane and people running around saying, "I am Christ, I am the Christ," and being aware of this during my experience of learning what this was exactly that was happening to me, I had that wake up in me. And instead of taking it and running with it, I am the Christ, I said, it's kind of, I was trying to understand what is it that I'm feeling right now, because I am not Christ, but I feel his spirit. And it was like I identified with it for a moment as if I was like a reincarnation of it. And I said, maybe this is what he meant, when it talks about we're supposed to be as him, be as he does. That's the goal, to be as he was, and I said maybe this is what it meant. But instead of identifying with it, in the egotistical, I guess you could say, standpoint, I was humble and I sat with it while I had it. And I wanted to know, this was like God's way of saying, this is what you're capable of, and this is the path I want you to walk on. Now use this, and I will take you to the place that you truly achieve
Mm.
the Christ conscious way of living. Now, I had the God consciousness wake up in me as well, and began to hear nature. I could hear the trees speaking, whispering between the wind going through the leaves, and I could hear the rocks crying out as the Bible spoke of. And I was like, "What is this?" Like it was just crazy stuff that I began to experience. That at the time I thought I was crazy. Like a part of me did. I thought I was crazy, and until I learned about how other people, experience these things, and how these are things that have true roots in reality. Like people have talked about this for a long time. They've just kept it hidden, and I mean, at least in my circles, they kept it hidden. But um, it's it's truly made me stand in awe and in humbleness, and humility for what we've been gifted with, this beautiful place. People talk about trying to escape this place, and I'm guilty of that. But this creation, whether you're here on earth or you're out there, it's perfect, and it's made for it's like one big cosmic clock with a bunch of cogs. That's what woke up in me. I stopped seeing it as it's us versus them, and I started realizing that this reality is made up perfect as it is. It's a story. It's a story. The writer knows how the story ends. Um, but the characters in the book don't really perceive what happens as you're reading through it. The characters don't know what happens at the end. We're within the book that he wrote that's already been finished. We've already finished this story. We're just stuck in this place in time that um it's playing out, and I believe this story is playing and replaying to perfect itself, because that's what God's creation does. It multiplies and it creates itself and it expands. And so that experience expanded my consciousness, learning these detailed practices, learning that I can co create with God and with Christ. And it's like he's training us up to be kings in our own realities. You know what I'm saying? And not to be kings in a sense of I need to have all the wealth in the world, but to
Mhm.
be kings of I'm in control. Nothing can harm me unless I give it permission to. Nothing can overtake me, and I have the power to not accept lack in my life, but the power to stand up and literally give
So
reality no,
I have a
but
quick
to allow
question.
you to stand in abundance.
I have a quick question about your beliefs since I didn't have this question initially, but listening to how you talk about free will and the idea that the story is already written, what are your thoughts on things like Calvinism, predestination, and predeterminism? Do you believe that we truly have free will, or do you believe that everything is predetermined? Do you think we can change our destiny, so to speak? It's
I
not really the topic. I'm just curious.
I believe we can change our destiny, absolutely, and that's what I mean by I believe this story is being retold over and over, perfecting itself, because that's what
Okay.
God's creations do, and that's what we are doing every day in our life. My goal every day is to wake up and just be better than I was yesterday. I don't wake up with the goal of being perfect today or building Rome. I literally just want to be better than I was yesterday and be of service in some kind or somehow to humanity, and to help others achieve the place I've been able to achieve in my relationship and walk and faith. But yeah, I believe the story has already been told. He says he's the Alpha and the Omega. Time don't exist out there. You know what I mean? It's all there. The beginning's happening right now, and the end has already come. And it's like there's how do I explain it? He's the Alpha, he's the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. He said he's not one or the other. He's both. And
I suppose how I've always seen it is that the major plot points, if you will, have already been determined, but
yes, I agree there. We come
everything in
into this
between
life
can
with
change.
things predetermined.
Oh yeah. So
We just don't know the full details of them, and we can shift to those things, but the overall goal.
I know it's veering a little off topic, but have you ever heard of chaos theory in mathematics?
I've heard of that, but I've never really studied or went into it. I don't
I,
think. Explain.
I like the idea of attractors where there can be extremely chaotic seeming nonsense, but systems oftentimes, despite not knowing exactly what's going to happen in between, will trend towards an overall outcome. I kind of see this whole thing as that, but that's just my take on it.
Right, right. I don't disagree with you.
Okay, so
I just, and I also feel this way, dude. Honestly, we have His power in us. The kingdom of heaven is in each of us, and it says we're the apple of His eye, um, in Scripture. And my understanding or perception, I'll just say it like that, is we are the center of our universe in God's eyes. Everything we experience, everything we do, everything we choose shifts the whole reality around us and our personal experience. Your
oh,
world ain't the
absolutely.
same world. Your world overlaps with my world, but it ain't the same world.
Hmm.
And I believe that we are the center of this whole thing here, and it Jesus talks about how He's in the Father and the Father's in Him, and that they're one. I believe that is true for us also. Um,
Oh, absolutely.
not putting us above Christ, or trying to be, heretical. I'm just saying He said we would do greater things than Him. But if you go in the church and try to say that, or even try to practice that, you will be cast out and called a witch, or a practitioner, a worker of demons, just like they called Him.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want that. And I don't just come at the Hermetic path, um, to achieve these states of consciousness. I come at it with a true dedication to offer myself as service to the kingdom. Where am I on that kingdom? I don't know. Who
Mhm.
am I exactly? I don't know. But I know that someday I will know, or remember, I should say.
All right.
Anyway,
So let's move on to the next topic that we were going to discuss. What are some practical things that people can do with the Kabbalah? You mentioned in the pre-show some meditations or some practical works that they can do. What are some of those?
there's some amazing people out there that give really great meditations and things like that. But I personally recommend just simply starting, not learning the colors or learning anything other than just the shape, and learning how to draw it out with a compass. And then sitting with
By
it
a
for about
compass,
five.
you mean the geometric tool, right?
Yes, the
Okay,
geometric
good,
tool,
good, good.
a compass. Use a compass, and it talks about in Scripture how God placed the earth on its foundation, and He used a compass, to create the face of the earth. Anyway, draw out the tree. Look up the Hermetic tree of life, and draw it out. There's a specific way that I recommend, and that is by starting out with a straight line down, vertically, and then you place your point of the compass on, somewhere that you have room to draw a circle near the bottom of your page, a big circle, that'll fit within your page, and then you put the point at the neck at the top of that circle where the vertical line meets it. Draw another circle. Do the same thing again, and then you'll be left with four circles. Doing it one more time, and you'll see that where those circles converge and meet, every place you're going to place your compass and draw a little tiny circle. I would say, these are going to be your sephiroths. You start with the bottom and then work your way up, and then do that. Draw it every time if you want to, but just sit with the symbol for 5 minutes, and then meditate for another 5 minutes, and just see what comes to you before you even learn about it. Allow images or words to pop in your mind. They're not random. They're not just chatter that your mind is doing. These may happen to fall into place later down the road. They may mean nothing at the time, but write them down somewhere on a paper, and just begin doing this once a week. Do it every day if you want to. Spend 30 minutes if you want to, an hour. But I'm just saying, just start out with 5 minutes, and don't put pressure on yourself to go into all these elaborate meditations. Start off with something simple like that, and then begin doing it. Start drawing it with the colors. Start drawing it with the names. Start drawing it with the Hebrew. You can elaborate on that as you wish. There is no you know perfect way of doing this. You follow your heart, and let it lead you, just with that symbol alone. You can also learn the flower of life and how it maps onto the flower of life also with a bunch of circles, And anyway,
I
that's a
actually have.
practice I recommend personally. Just
I think.
drawing it alone will do things to your psyche and your subconscious that you wouldn't believe. It will shake you loose.
Oh, absolutely. I think these simple meditations are a pretty good idea for anyone starting out. I don't think that enough people do it in my opinion. You're kind of forced to do some of them when you go through the beginning grades of the Golden Dawn, but
Yeah.
some more advanced ones that I would recommend is if you focus on individual sephira,
Yes. Yep.
even if you don't know the divine name, it might even seem nonsensical, but trying to focus on individual sephira. And then if you get to know the
I do
divine
that as well.
names, if you get to know the names of the divine names, the archangels, the
Mhm.
choir of angels, maybe vibrate them from top to bottom or bottom to top as you get more familiar with them. And those are always nice too. And one that I like from Uriah Kaplan is his meditation on Hokmah and Binah, trying to
Mhm.
meditate in a state where you're going between the silent wisdom versus the understanding. It's
Mhm.
That's an interesting little one as well if you get into that. I think all of these things, starting from simple, going all the way up to the so-called most complicated, is a great way for people to really,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're
yeah,
you're literally talking about the hierarchy of the kingdom
yeah.
of heaven, essentially. You're learning how the government operates up there, essentially.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
it's so many things you can go into to elaborating on, and especially with the place I'm in right now in the Golden Dawn. I've really been heavy on Malkut and
Hmm.
understanding the place I've always tried to run from. You know what I mean? And
Oh, yes.
understanding the why they say Keter is in Malkut and Malkut is in Keter. What does that mean? And I finally believe I understand it. And the earth and material things aren't inherently evil. They're holiness. It's just a matter of learning to transmute that. You're trying to undo that curse that was placed upon the earth in your own sphere, in your own life.
All right, so we're getting pretty close to being out of time. I'd like to give you a few minutes just to talk somewhat uninterrupted about the following. Just tell us how this practice has improved your life overall, specifically with respect to Kabbalah. You can add in some of your experiences with, some of the basic ceremonial magic that you've done as well if you want. But how has it improved your life overall?
How has it improved my life? Well, at first, it didn't. Um,
That's
Jumping onto
very
this
good.
path, it destroyed my life. I'm gonna put it that way. But it didn't destroy it in an evil matter. It destroyed it in the sense that it got rid of everything that don't serve me. And I just started off, trusting that the divine would help me to figure this out and trusting that the plan was going to work. And eventually it brought me to the realization that I was in control and it took me out of a lack mindset or a victim mindset. I've been through so much trauma. Anyone would feel like a victim given the things I've been through, but I'm not anyone's victim. I am a survivor. I will always be a survivor. And it made me a survivor, I guess you could say. But it allowed me to truly get to know who I am and truly get to dive into what it is that I truly enjoy doing. Not what everybody expects me to do, not what everybody wants me to be, but to be who I was created to be and to serve what and the capacity that I was created to serve here on this earth in this personality that I'm in, right now. But it's allowed me to explore my creative talents that I'd never, really pursued before. Just for instance, painting. I love painting. I never knew that. I love doing crafts. I never knew that. And these are things that are essential to magic. And it's brought out the kid in me. And the Bible talks that we are supposed to have childlike faith and to come before the throne like little children. And when you were a child, you believe the world is a magical place. You just see it as this massive place of just endless wonder, and somewhere you lose that. Somewhere something happens, and it happened to me, and unfortunately it was in the worst possible way. And I forgot what it was like to experience joy and to experience open-minded, how do I put it, to experience my heart at play. I didn't remember that, and I didn't even know I was able to or capable or even allowed to as an adult, to be a kid again. And sometimes you just got to go back to what's simple. And the closest you've ever been to God, in my opinion, is your youth. The longer you've been on this earth, the further away from Him you've been, because that was when that's where you come from. Um, and anyway, in the Gnostic scriptures, it talks about how to get past the archons. And one of the things that you're told to say is, I come from the Father, and unto the Father I return. And that's true, and that's where I want to be. And I don't want to go out here and dedicate my life to, how do I put it, without trying to speak against it. I don't. Church is just not the place I'm supposed to be as of this place in my life right now, um, doing anything churchy, I guess you could say. I like going to church, not saying that. I'm just saying that's not the place I'm going to be able to operate in my call until something changes. But I don't try to fit in there so that I can operate in my gifts. And it's allowed me to break away from that, because it actually hindered me. It held me back, because they want you to feel like you've got to fit in with the clique. And true. I'm not saying there's not churches out there that truly believe with an open mind, or with freedom. Christ give us the ultimate freedom. You know what I mean? And most churches don't believe in that, and they believe
Well,
in all these rules. But
all right. I'd
I was
say
able to stand.
I'd say
I was
that
able to
this is
stand firmly on my path.
all right. I would say that that's a pretty good explanation you gave. We're about out of time. I would like to have thank you
All
for
right.
coming on, and I would
Thank you for
hope that
having me, man. I enjoy doing this every time we do it.
oh, absolutely. I hope to have you on again. We could probably talk about
Anytime.
something even, we could talk about other things as well.
Man, you can
So,
talk about anything in this world, and I'm going to sit here and entertain it, because I don't believe that
oh,
the
absolutely.
possibilities are endless.
All
We live
right.
in an
Well,
awesome creation.
this has been the Hermetic Podcast, and I would like to wish all of you a wonderful day.
Have a good one.